Today is a Thursday, and I believe this is the day that Grant does his NBA Lounge. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, NBA Lounge Day every Thursday at 4.
What a segment! What a show, Grant. The Wisco Sports Show.
I don't know that it's that great. The funny thing is, people who don't really love the NBA, they just enjoy it as a bit. So it's something most folks look forward to, I guess. Not everyone.
But you talk NBA.
Yeah, it's like putting medicine in a pudding cup. Like even people who don't want to talk NBA, you just deliver it in such a way where you distract them with the music and the pageantry, and all of a sudden they're talking about the Cavs game, and that's what's fun about it.
Well, there's a lot to talk about with the NBA. We'll kind of focus on the Bucks for the most part. I keep thinking of the conversation I had with you and Paul Imig 2 weeks ago, right before the All-Star break, about Bucks Twitter. And, Bucks Twitter, because there's some people that aren't on Twitter, and then I bring up Twitter. I'm always self-conscious about that. I can't be just like, hey, Twitter. And then if you don't listen to Twitter, you're like, why is he always talking about this 17-year-old Packer fan that fights him?
Yeah, I can barely hear the phone number fast enough to call into the show. Yeah, not everyone's on Twitter.
So I'm trying to be conscious of that, but I also think it extends to like a representation of some of the fan base. And we had talked about how I got to remember some of these people I'm talking to online are kids. And what happens is, you put out a tweet and it gets some reaction, and then it blows, and it kind of becomes like the conversation of the day within the Bucks Twitter community. And what I've noticed is since we talked about how they're all kids, it's only gotten worse. The level that we choose to purposely panic about our beloved Bucks does not quite register with me. When Giannis got hurt, people are saying, "Oh, that playoffs are done." We went immediately there. When they lose to the Sixers, I thought that night was fine. The next day, everyone's like, well, in a 7-game series, like you can't break any of that down right now. The Bucks are a very good team. In their last game, they said, we don't even need Giannis and Drew. We can just beat the Magic by 10, like hardly trying. They did.
A live team, by the way. Like, if you don't watch a lot of basketball, you might think, the Magic are a joke. The Magic aren't contenders, but that's a solid team with a lot of NBA players, and they kind of just dispatched them last night without their stars.
Last night, 2 nights ago.
Yeah,
and
2 nights ago. Thank you.
It's very much on the up and up. But what I said about that game was it was just like two teams that go to a gym, pick teams, hoop, but the Bucks team was they're just better. So the better team's just going to win. And I think we need to remind ourselves that when you look at the East especially, the Bucks team is just better. And I will finally ask you a question. I said on CBS Sports Radio that I think there's a lot of teams that can pick off Boston. But Boston's the only team that can pick off the Bucks. Your thoughts?
Okay. I missed this part of it, and I listened to almost your whole show last weekend on CBS Sports Radio, and I missed this part.
If anyone's dying to hear me again, 1-5 on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
So I will be on while the Badgers are in the Big Ten championship, or they could have already lost by the time we're recording. Who knows?
Probably the former. They're about to get hot, so I don't know if I buy into the latter. But the Eastern Conference is so interesting, and I talked about this, I think, 2 weeks ago in the NBA Lounge, in that, like, all of these series are going to look very different. Like, the Bucks are built one way, and the Sixers are built another way, and the Celtics are built another way. And like, if the Bucks and the Celtics are going to match up, you're going to see a version of the Bucks and a version of the Celtics you'll only see in that series, right? Or if you shuffle the opponents around, like, I really like the movie National Treasure. So the way I was trying to think about this is when Ben Gates finds the glasses, right? And based on which colors you use, you get different combinations of the words on the treasure map. Like, that's going to be the NBA playoffs. So the Sixers are going to very much look like one team, and then they'll look like a different team based on who they're matched up against. It's not just that the league has lots of parity this year, and like you said, lots of teams could pick off different teams. It's that all these teams are constructed so differently. So it's really hard to forecast what teams will look like come the postseason, because we really have to know who they'll be playing against. And that's really interesting. I mean, we've seen the last week or two that Boston's beatable. I think they get in their own head. I think they're immature, right? And who is the NBA guy you had on CBS Sports Radio? It was a weeknight when you were doing Gelb last week. And he was like, I think Boston's hungry. They're upset about last year. They're angry.
It was one of those guys. I forgot his name. All right. Rick Kamla.
Okay. Yeah.
He's one of these guys who, if you don't, like, you might not know his name, but you know his face.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll have to look that up when we're done. I thought those comments were interesting because that's how I feel about the Bucks. I think the Bucks are pissed off about last year, and I think the Bucks are on a mission. I watch the Celtics. I see a very immature team. I see a team that.
If you're on YouTube, Rick Kamla is now on your screen. That guy.
Okay. Yeah. I think Boston's very immature. I think the same of the Sixers. They whine and they complain. The Sixers didn't look like they were having fun on Saturday night, Bart. All they did was whine.
You gotta have fun. And what's the point if you're not having fun?
It's just a kid's game after all. Yeah, but I think the Celtics and the Sixers, especially those two teams, that get in their own head about the refs and Harden and Tatum, and they whine and that's, I think, a big reason why Boston lost last year. That could absolutely happen again, and that could happen against a lot of teams if Boston is in that position. Yeah, I'm with you.
And then I also don't think I like beating the Sixers and I like beating the Celtics. I don't care what lineup they trot out. Yeah. And if they win, it's fun to rile up their fan base and vice versa. You know, Philly was riling us up and all that. But these games, while they matter for the standings, they are so unreflective of what, to your point, a series will look like. Yeah. They are just one game on the schedule where the teams play for 48 minutes. But then in a series, I think, there's so many interchangeable parts, and every series is different. You're right. They're going to play different guys. I just think that the Bucks are not that vulnerable to most of the teams. But with the Celtics, they've got more guys. So the Sixers the other night, McDaniels could get hot, and Maxey could get hot.
Niang got hot.
But those guys could get hot against anyone.
Mm-hmm.
The Celtics have guys that are only going to get hot against the Bucks.
Horford. Yeah. I get you.
Grant Williams. Luke Cornett will have a night. Mike Muscala. Those guys aren't going to do anything in the playoffs. But in a series against the Bucks, suddenly it's Brian Anderson and Stan Van Gundy being like, I can't believe Mike Muscala, 29 points.
I can hear it. That stupid mustache. Van Gundy.
Brian, I don't know. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
The one thing with Stan Van Gundy is that he references his record on the year with predicting which way a challenge will go. I don't give a shit. I don't care. There's very few things in the world I care about less than.
Do you know my son can say Antetokounmpo better than SVG? And I only asked him once. I told him what his name was a few times. Muscle memory. I tell him our address, my phone number, where you live, and how to say Giannis's last name. And I said, buddy, what's Giannis's last name? And he goes, and this was 3 days later, he says, Antetokounmpo. Already better than Van Gundy. It's 3.5.
Well, it's that woke school you're sending him to where he learns such good language skills, both English and Spanish. That probably helps.
Yeah, we're woke in this. Woke. I love woke means anything.
Yeah. The Celtics, what were we talking about? They're immature. They have lots of shooters. There was something I was going to add. Oh, the Celtics' advantage, I thought all year compared to the Bucks, was that they were deeper, right? I thought the Bucks, their star talent at the top of the roster was better. I'll take Giannis, Drew, and Chris if he's healthy over Tatum, Brown, Smart, throw whatever. So I thought the top end was better than Boston's, but Boston had more depth. I still think Boston's deeper, but the Bucks have gotten really sneaky deep in the last 2 weeks. I'm sure you've gone through this where you've sat down to watch the Bucks and you thought, God damn, when did this happen? All of a sudden, Joe Ingles is healthy and Jay Crowder's in the rotation.
Javon Carter goes off for 25 when you need him.
Yeah. Wesley Matthews, he's, I may have said this on this pod before. He's what Draymond Green once said. There's 82 game players and there's 16 game players. Wesley Matthews is a 16 game player. He can have a moment in a playoff game. I don't want to expect things from him night to night, but there will be a quarter where he can have a huge impact. And the Bucks have a lot of guys like that. I didn't think that 5 months ago, and now I do. Part of that is them getting healthy and then acquiring Jay Crowder. I can't stand Goran Dragic. I detest him, but he's good point guard insurance as well, a true point guard who can be ball secure in the face of full court pressure and really intense defense in the playoffs. So the Bucks are really, really deep all of a sudden, and that was an advantage that the Celtics used to have. And I think they're still deeper, but not by much.
Well, the Bucks are very deep, and I think like all this, someone was going to be the team to get Myers Leonard, and I do think he's done, but he's part of it. And so then
I forgot about
to go back to the initial thing, like people were freaking out that was a Haslam move, and I don't know where the connection was there. But then
brilliant, honestly. I wish I would have thought of that.
Then people are mad that, well, if the Bucks win the title, they're going to give the trophy to Haslam. How does anyone care for any? You know when they give, like the last time they gave the trophy, does anyone remember that? I remember Giannis up there with the MVP trophy, but I mean, I was just bagged in the Deer District. You think I'm going to stand and watch and be like, I got to see Wes Edens get this trophy or Mark Lazary because they are the owners. They did not play. And now Jimmy Haslam's going to come in here and buy a championship, which good business sense, I suppose. Speaking of Jimmy Haslam, the collusion, that is absolutely a thing with Lamar Jackson.
It's weird. And I'm with you about Haslam. I was not in the Deer District, but I was in the Dells District for a night, and I'll tell you, it was glorious. I could not have had my mind farther away from owners getting a trophy that night. I did not care. I went into Brothers for the first time in like over a year because we're just going in anywhere there were people. I think it was a Tuesday night. I can't remember. We're just anywhere there was people, we were going in. So no, I didn't care about the owner getting a trophy. We love to care about things that don't matter. I ranted about this on my show last week, and it's not just like it's with the Packers. Your evil Mark Murphy bit. The Packers will take Josiah DeGuara in the 3rd round, or they'll draft A.J. Dillon in the. They'll do these things that just don't make a lot of football sense, and they should drive us nuts. And yet Mark Murphy's mailbag is filled with questions about, gestures broadly, just the dumbest stuff. And that's Wisconsin fans. It's probably all sports fans. But we care about stupid things. It's like, I care about Chris Middleton getting healthy, and I care about them figuring out the rotation. Do they go bigger? Do they go smaller? What's Bobby Portis' role in a playoff spot? And then we have a section of Bucks Twitter that's all gathered to complain about the ownership structure in 4 years, right? With Haslam and Dinan, and who cares, right? Like, let's not focus on these dumb things. We're always chasing the shiny object that doesn't matter. It's one of my pet peeves about this fan base. I don't know if it's true in other states and in other markets, but it's very much true here.
And if you're in lacrosse and they win a championship this summer and you're upset and you don't want to see Jimmy Haslam take the trophy, just go down the block. You can see Terry Bradshaw giving the trophy to Ron Wolf at Shooters. The Super Bowl 31 victory.
Did you get to see? You weren't in college. When did you graduate UWL? What was your window there?
02 to 06.
So I started in 2016. I went to school until the summer of 2020, and I had a couple buddies. We all watched sports, and I was like, we're so close with so many of our teams. I just want one title when we are living here, right? Like when we're all here and can celebrate and watch together. And we got so close with the Packers. We got close with the Brewers in 18. We bought, just making the World Series, we would have celebrated. We bought cases of Miller Lite, like we were ready, and it was just the saddest affair. And I'm glad, selfishly, I know you didn't ask me about this, but seeing we brought up lacrosse, I'm very selfishly glad that I got to celebrate that title here in my college town when a lot of my friends still lived here. That was really cool. And again, didn't care about the owner getting the trophy. Didn't matter to me. Don't worry about it.
How could it possibly? One thing that I tried to channel you when I was on CBS Sports Radio last weekend, and I'll continue to do it, is your anti-Jokic crusade for MVP. Yeah, and it's amazing. What's amazing to me is the people in the media, and that's why I was so happy that I got a good breakdown with Eric Name on this a couple weeks ago.
The best, by the way. Again, cheers to that conversation and to Eric Name because he's the best.
But the way that some of these guys are like, they're really pushing for Jokic to get it, to spite the people that don't think he should get it, but the people that don't think he should get it, like, I think Name's point is right. You can't. I'm not even kidding you. I'm not like, we would know that Jordan would not win the MVP because they give it to someone else. They were really trying to be the most reflective of that time. Is that the right way? No. is it the, what is the right way? The right way is probably Jordan should have 10 and LeBron should have 10. But other guys have nice years. So you're like, well, let's give it to Russ. Let's give it to Rose. They're deserving. If this was the past, this year's MVP would go to Embiid because he's good enough. He's been close. They would give it to him. If this was 1998, they would give the MVP to Joel Embiid. So I just don't understand why, like, of all the players, I don't mind if you start to change history and say, forget anything else. But to change the rules for Nikola Jokic is, come on.
It's very bizarre. And there's points that we've addressed and there's points that you and Eric addressed. I'll just kind of regurgitate a point I heard Nick Wright make yesterday that I thought was really good on First Things First, which is an awesome sports TV show. I think most sports TV is swill. I think that I look forward to going home and watching YouTube clips of the show. Nick Wright made a great point in that the NBA MVP, probably unlike the NFL or unlike Major League Baseball, tells the story of the league. So if you just looked through the MVPs throughout the decades, right, the 60s were Wilt and Russell, and that's where most all of the rings were won from those two. The 70s were Kareem. The 80s were Bird and Magic. The 90s were Jordan. Hakeem got in there as well. Like, there were others. You get to the end, it's Duncan and Kobe. Like, you could just look at the MVPs over the course of time and kind of understand the league, which is pretty cool. It's not something that I thought about. And in 40 years, 50 years, right, or 67 years is now we're looking back a long time ago and thinking, okay, yeah, Russell, well, they won MVPs. That tells the story. You're going to be like, well, how many did Nikola Jokic win? He must have won a lot of rings because nobody wins 3 in a row. And that couldn't be further from the truth. He's made one conference finals, and it was in a playoffs that was in a field house in Disney World, right?
And they're not going to win this year. They're not winning this year.
No one thinks they're gonna. Everyone who's like passionately stumping for Nikola Jokic, ask them who they're going to pick to win the conference final. Who's coming out of the West? And they probably won't. Yeah, they won't say Nuggets with a bullet, which is what we've said about previous MVPs, right? And that's, I don't know. It's so dumb. There's lots of angles, but that was a new one that I heard yesterday that I thought was really interesting.
Grizzlies are trashed. They're done.
Insane. Okay, so there's this NBA Twitter person that I've followed. Her name is Molly Morrison. She works at Bleacher Report now. She was just kind of like this funny member of NBA Twitter. Now I'm not ripping her, but like now she's at Bleacher Report. It's a whole thing. But she's a Grizzlies fan, right? So I've always kind of seen Grizzlies tweets. She's one of the few. And a couple weeks ago, she tweeted like, hey, it was really fun when nationally the Grizzlies were getting all this attention. Now it sucks and I hate it. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I've been there with the Bucks, right? It was so fun for the first 2 years. It was love Giannis, Bud, look at what he's done in Milwaukee and all these role players. And as soon as the NBA fandom and media decides you're not enough or you're not good enough, it's brutal, right? Because then you're just a punching bag. And it seems like that's what's happened to the Grizzlies. And different situation, obviously, with Ja, but I get it. That small market team that's finally got the spotlight and doing good things, and then all of a sudden, everyone's opinion changes. That's got to be brutal for Grizzlies fans.
Well, their ineptitude has allowed your Kings to take the number 2 seed for the time being.
The Kings are the 2 seed. It's just a wild world that we live in. By the way, everyone, like 2 weeks ago, remember when everyone was putting out Clippers pieces and Clippers podcasts? What are the Clippers? They're a game or two over 500. Like I said, I watched the Clippers.
They can't figure it out. What is it?
I don't know why they added Russ. And I'm not that anti-Russ, but they had Wall, who's very similar, and it didn't work. It is very confusing. The question with the Clippers is if Paul George and Kawhi can actually be healthy and perform in the clutch and be alive for a whole playoff run. It's not whether they have Russ at point guard or not. I don't know. That team's very bizarre.
Well, Grant, good to talk NBA with you. The NBA Lounge, Wisco Sports Show, statewide, close enough, 4 p.m.
Close enough. By the way,
you're not on 920?
No.
That's dumb.
I want to be. I really want to be. But inside baseball, it's iHeart. And I guess I was talking to some people I work with. It's hard to get in. They have their shows. They have their content. You would know better than me how big time radio works. But yeah.
What's on the big 920 when you're on?
I think it's Cowherd on delay. Last time I looked, and I'm like, oh, that's brutal. Like,
yikes.
And I love Cowherd, but we should have local or at least more local talk. But it is what it is. Cheers
to you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bart. We'll talk soon.
You're a good steward of the Wisconsin media. I appreciate you.
You as well. Thanks, Bart.